Do you want to learn how I made this visual novel in under 48 hours with no experience? Hi, my name is Oyen Orca of VTuber Tries to Draw, and recently I made this game for the GMTK's 2025 Game Jam in just 2 days. This was my first time ever making a visual novel, and in this video, I'll share how I did it, lessons I've learned, general tips, and even more. Before I get started, this video will spoil some of the mechanics and endings, so if you're interested, please try out my game. The link is in the description down below and in the pinned comment. It's mobile and browser friendly, just click run game to play it. So now let's get straight into my process, starting with the idea and story. For a little bit of context, I've always wanted to make a visual novel in the past, and was especially inspired by this one visual novel called Save the Date by Paper Dino. Also built in Ren'py, without spoiling anything, the endings in the story of this game was very impactful to me in a lot of ways, and it's also a goal of mine to achieve something similar with my own work. If you're interested in playing, a link to download this game is also in the description down below. I was also inspired by the Stanley Parable. I played it for the first time very recently, and really liked the idea of playing through the same beginnings to get multiple endings, sort of looping back. So when I saw that the GMTK Game Jam theme this year was loop, despite only finding out with 1 day and 19 hours left on the clock, I knew I had to join. I really like games with different endings, so pulling from my inspirations as well as the theme, I started to draft ideas. A few months back, I had a random idea for a visual novel of boating at night with my persona, but I never really acted on it or had a solid story. I just sort of had an idea that you could replay it, and the main bulk of it happened on the boat. Building off of that, I decided to think of a story where the player starts out drowning, they don't know why, and are brought up into Oyen's boat, and then through a series of events, solve some sort of mystery as to why they were drowning in the first place. I first did a very rough flowchart of this on paper, and then moved it over to FigJam. Originally, this was a more complicated story involving some more parts, especially related to the context of why the player was drowning in the first place, but I wasn't entirely happy with it. I wasn't sure what was missing from the story, and wanted to improve my starting writing skills, which brings us into the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Lately, I've been wanting to improve my storytelling skills especially, which is why I've been taking the Storytelling 101 Character, Conflict, Context, and Craft class by Daniel Hosea Older, a New York Times bestselling author and renowned urban fantasy writer. While my own visual novel is not exactly an actual novel, there is still a lot of narrative here, and the primary gameplay is delivered through a mix of both the visuals and text, though I wanted to make sure that the story especially was stronger. In my own flowchart story here, I was especially struggling with characterization and background of both my character as well as the player's character. Daniel's class really helped me improve the clarity of my story by just introducing some simple but very crucial parts of how to make a character interesting and likable. First, we need to understand and believe in their humanity, and second, the character needs to want something. Going back to my flowchart, I made a quick note on how to better characterize the two characters in the story, both Oyen and the player. But at this point, I still wasn't 100% sure on the story still. Even after listening to Daniel's advice and getting some great points on how to improve my narrative, I still felt a little writer's block. However, Daniel advocates to just write the story anyways, write the best you can, and to get feedback on your writing. So I took part of his advice and just got started writing the story. I had planned to get beta readers and players. However, towards the end of this, I did end up giving up on the idea due to the time crunch, but in the future I would definitely love to get more beta readers and players before actually publishing my game. Still, this class overall was super helpful in helping me to develop a better narrative. You can take this class and many more all on Skillshare. Learn directly from real, super talented, and successful creatives in categories like art, illustration, design, writing, photography, and so much more. If you're interested in taking this class or many others, the first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today! Now that we have the general flowchart story together, let's move into the art. The very first assets that I made for the game were these two thumbnails, a sketch for the title card, and surprisingly, the daytime beach scene. The colors for the title card started off a lot more gray and dreary originally, to push a sort of foggy and mysterious mood. However, I felt like it wasn't very interesting to look at, so using an overlay layer, I pushed the cool tones of the background and warm tones of the skin just a little slightly, and once I felt satisfied with the colors, this title card helped direct the rest of the game's visual look and palette. Another thing that I want to mention is that I worked on a rather small canvas size of only 128 by 720 pixels. This is because not only is the smaller canvas size easier and faster for me to draw on, but since I wanted to make sure that my game would be playable in a browser later on, too big of a game would make it slower to download, therefore I wanted to use a smaller canvas size. With that out of the way, I started to work on all the game assets. When drawing this, I color picked a lot from the title card, and after drawing the background and character, I would separate the background and export that separately from the character sprites, which I would do on a transparent layer. Also, when drawing the character, I made sure to separate out anything that would need to be changed. For example, on the first scene with Oyen, I drew the face and eye color on a different layer, and if I hide those layers, this is what it looks like. A blank face. I grouped the faces into these folders or into the same layer, and that way I could easily switch between the different expressions and export these all out separately. Or for example, for the scene in the boat, since a big portion of the game takes place on the boat, I separated out the boat from the different backgrounds, the different character poses, and even separated out the body and the head in one of the poses where the character's head turns. I took around 9 hours for all of the assets altogether, however I definitely did not do all of this in one session. Since I had the general plot and idea in mind, once I had a few starting poses, I started to code things out in Ren'py, which brings us into the next phase, Ren'py. So every game needs a game engine, and I decided to use Ren'py for my game engine since I've heard it's a very beginner-friendly and easy-to-use visual novel game engine. And because time is of the essence here with game jams, it was very important to me to choose something that wasn't too complex to learn. I won't delve into a full tutorial here, but Ren'py has some amazing and super clear documentation that you can follow along with. Or you can also watch YouTube videos, like these videos from Zale Learnings, to guide you through the process. I've linked both of these in the description down below. One aspect that I especially wanted in my game was persistent data. In order to get the looping game effect, so that the game would remember player choices, what endings the player has seen, and how many times the player has played the game, I wanted this to influence the game and options available to the player, so I had to use persistent variables in Ren'py. I followed this tutorial from Zale as well as the Ren'py documentation, and essentially the way I integrated these into my game is by adding these persistent.sceneEndingXYZ variables in the beginning of the game. I'll set the default of these to false, and add a line that will change it to true after completion of a route or ending. I also had a persistent playthrough counter that would add 1 to the count each time a player replayed the game. This way, the introduction and certain dialogue options would change as you play. Something fun about doing a visual novel for me personally was being able to jump between doing both the code and the art aspect. If I got tired of drawing, I could work on the story and code, and if I got tired of that, I could go back to drawing sprites. I was debating on sharing the code for this, but this ended up like over 1,000 lines long, and I still want to add to this. So for now, I won't share it, but if you'd like me to share it at some point, please let me know. Finally, once we have most of the game and art together, it's time to think about audio. Audio tends to be an afterthought for me a lot of the times, but especially for this game, I wanted to make sure that the audio felt immersive and real. As a disclaimer, I know nothing about sound design, but since I watch a lot of movies, I tried to pull from that and mix lots of different sounds together to sort of create a certain ambience or vibe. For example, in the beginning scene, I mixed 2 different underwater audio sounds to indicate deeper and shallower water as the player is being pulled up. And when the player is finally pulled up to the surface, I cut a submerge-emerge sound effect and layered that with a general looping ocean wave sound effect to get this. Another thing to mention is that it's recommended to convert any MP3 or WAV files into OGG or Opus files. These allow for more efficient file sizes for the audio, which was especially important to me since I was using a lot of sound effects. I really used a lot, as you can see here on my credits page. When I couldn't find something specific for a scene that I wanted, for example, when I wanted the stepping into a boat sound effect, I thought about what material the boat is made out of, and then found an adjacent sound effect, in this case a creaky door sound. Then, mixing it and layering it over the ocean sounds looping in the background, it now sounds like someone stepping into a boat. So essentially the advice that I can give here is mix sounds, browse around for resources, and don't be afraid to make your own atmosphere here. If you're looking for places to get free sound effects, I primarily used Freesound and Zapsplat, both of which I've linked in the description down below. And when you put it all together, you get a finished game with audio, art, story, and persistent data with a looping theme. Overall, this was a really fun and valuable experience to me, and despite initially feeling intimidated by the idea of making a game by myself in such a short time frame, through using resources like Skillshare on storytelling and YouTube tutorials on Ren'py, and locking into drawing my own assets, I was able to complete this entire game in under 48 hours. I highly encourage other people who want to make a visual novel but haven't yet to just go for it. Even if it's just a short game like the one I did, it was a really fun experience, and the reception from those who played the game made it all the more worth it. Again, if you'd like to play this game, the link is in the description down below, and also on the pinned comment. And that's it! Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, I would appreciate if you give this video a like, and subscribe if you'd like to see more from my channel. I'll see you next time, bye bye!